All right, let's talk about the Gacha world. You can't have that conversation without mentioning the absolute behemoth, Raid Shadow Legends. It's a money-making machine, no doubt. But its success is kind of built on a foundation that, let's be honest, drives a lot of players crazy. So, what if a new game came along that wasn't just another clone, but was designed from the ground up to be a direct fix for all those frustrations? Well, that's what we're diving into today with Godforge, the game that's trying to take on the king, not by copying it, but by fixing it.
Okay, so first things first, you gotta give credit where it's due. Raid Shadow Legends is an absolute monster in the market. I mean, we've all seen the ads, right? They are everywhere. Through that just relentless marketing, they've built a financial empire that pretty much every other developer envies. For millions of people, Raid is the hero collector genre. It's the benchmark. But here's the thing. That success has a flip side, a really significant dark side. You talk to the player base, and you hear the same things over and over. The game is just dominated by pay to win. The gear ground is, well, it's soul-crushing, buried under layers and layers of RNG. And there's this constant FOMO, this fear of missing out, that just burns players out. It's an incredible revenue machine, for sure, but it's a machine that often runs on player exhaustion. So this is the exact opening Godforge is aiming for. They're not coming in saying, hey, we're another raid. No, their entire pitch is that they are a strategic correction. The marketing message is simple, and honestly, it's brilliant. Hey, all that stuff that frustrates you in Raid, we built a game that fixes it. This is more than just a new title. It's a direct challenge to the fundamental design choices that make players want to pull their hair out. Okay, so how are they actually doing it? What's the plan? Well, it all starts with the core gameplay loop. They're not just tweaking things around the edges. They're making fundamental changes to two of the biggest pillars of the genre, the combat system and the gacha system. You know, the whole hero pulling mechanic. Look, if you've spent any serious time in Raid's endgame, you know all about the speed tyranny. It's not a secret. Speed isn't just one stat among many. It is the stat, period. The entire meta, especially in PvP, is built around who goes first. And that just leads to the same boring, predictable teams over and over. Godforge's answer to this is a brand new system called Divinity. And its entire purpose is to shatter that speed meta by separating a hero's biggest, baddest move from the simple turn order. So what exactly is Divinity? The easiest way to think about it is like a super meter in a fighting game. It's a completely separate resource bar for each character's ultimate ability. So instead of just waiting your turn, heroes build this divinity meter up by doing things in the fight. Attacking, getting hits, supporting allies. It adds this whole other strategic layer that runs in parallel to the normal turn-based system. And what's really cool is how different heroes interact with it. It is not a one-size-fits-all system at all. You've got someone like Ra, who builds his divinity by landing debuffs. Then you have Thor, who just walks into the fight with his meter already juiced up. Shamash gets it when he joins in on an ally's attack. And Cleopatra is basically a team battery, charging everyone else up. You can see right away how this blows the strategic doors wide open, creating team comps that just wouldn't be possible if all you cared about was speed. The other huge change is all about the gacha pulls themselves. We've all been there in Raid, right? You pull a legendary and it's a duplicate. It's such a feel-bad moment. That super rare hero just becomes food for another one. Godforge is flipping that completely on its head. In their system, duplicates give you imprints. These are permanent passive stat boosts for that hero. So all of a sudden, every single pull has value. Even a dupe makes you stronger in the long run. It's just a much more respectful way to handle the player's time and money. All right, let's move on from the core mechanics and talk about the real elephant in the room for this entire genre, the grind. This is, without a doubt, Raid's biggest weakness. If you ask people why they quit, 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be the grind. And let's not just talk about it in vague terms. Let's put a hard number on it. The community over on Reddit actually did the math, and wow. It takes an average of 4,844 energy just to level up the food champs you need to take one single hero to 6 stars. That is an insane amount of energy, which, remember, is the main resource that stops you from playing the game. So what does that number actually mean in terms of time? For a free-to-play player who's being super efficient, we're talking only farming during the 2x XP events, that works out to about 35 days. A little over a month. Let that sink in. Over a month of dedicated grinding to get one character ready for the endgame. And this quote from a player on the Raid subreddit just says it all, doesn't it? I have about 12 usable champs sitting at level 50 because I just don't have enough fight left in me. This is the human cost of that grind. You get all these cool new heroes you want to try, but the thought of that month-long slog just to make them viable is so demoralizing that they just collect dust. The game basically punishes you for wanting to try new things. So how does Godforge tackle this? The core idea is predictability over frustration. Two big things here. First, with gear. When you get a stat roll, you can actually see the quality of that roll. There are visible tiers. So no more guessing if you got a good roll or a terrible one. The game just tells you. And second, target farming. You want to farm helmets? You go to the helmet dungeon. It's that simple. Look, it doesn't get rid of the grind completely, but it makes it way less of a random, frustrating lottery. It respects your time. And all of these design choices, the combat, the gacha, the grind, they all lead up to this. The final, and maybe the most important difference, the business model. How the game actually makes its money, and, more importantly, how it makes the player feel about spending money. This quote here is from Colred, a pretty big raid content creator, and it is so powerful. This is a guy whose career is literally built around playing this one game, and he makes a conscious choice not to spend money on it. Why? Because in his words, he doesn't like the way they treat their player base. When your biggest fans are telling you that, you have a serious problem. That right there is a huge vulnerability. And that really gets to the heart of the two competing philosophies here. On one hand, you have Raid's model. It's high pressure, it's those invasive pop-ups the second you log in, it's all designed to get a revenue spike right now. On the other hand, you have Godforge's stated goal of being achievable F2P. The focus is on things like the Battle Pass, things that provide steady, long-term value. The goal isn't to squeeze you for cash today, it's to build a game you'll enjoy for the long haul, and maybe you'll choose to spend along the way. A massive piece of that puzzle is competitive integrity. Let's face it, high-end PvP in Raid is basically a sandbox for the biggest whales. If you don't spend, you don't compete. It's that simple. Godforge is trying to fix this with things like normalized PvP and draft modes, where your gear and stats are equalized. It becomes about who's the better player, who knows the game better, not who has the bigger wallet. And that is so important, because you need a strong competitive free-to-play base to keep the game alive. I mean, who are the whales going to beat up on if everyone else leaves? You put all this together, the fairer combat, the better gacha value, the less random grind, the ethical spending, and it all points to one big idea, an anti-burnout design. They're trying to build a game where you don't feel punished for having a life outside the game. The events are more flexible, it's easier to come back after taking a break. It's all designed to get rid of that awful feeling that if you miss a few days, you're permanently behind forever. That feeling is what kills these games. So, let's zoom out. What does this all add up to? What could the ripple effect of a game like Godforge actually be on the wider market? Now, we have to be realistic here. Is Godforge going to come out and dethrone Raid in terms of pure revenue in year one? No, almost certainly not. A titan like Raid has way too much momentum, too much brand recognition. That's just not going to happen overnight. But that's not really the point. What it is positioned to do is to become the leader in a completely new category, the ethical gacha. It's setting itself up to be the go-to game for any serious competitive player who is just completely fed up with the pay-to-win model. And that is the real impact here. It's not just about one game's success, it's about setting a new standard. By creating this haven for frustrated players, it puts a ton of pressure on giants like Raid to actually fix their own problems. If they start losing their most dedicated players to a competitor that treats them better, they'll have to respond. So Godforge's biggest victory might be forcing the rest of the industry to clean up its act. Which leads us with a really fascinating question for the future of the entire gacha genre. Godforge is essentially making a huge bet. They're betting that respecting a player's time, intelligence, and wallet is a more sustainable, more profitable business model in the long run than just chasing those short-term revenue spikes. And if they're right, well, that could change everything.